Hello, welcome. I'm glad to be here with you, Jen, to talk about our next topic in our HR Huddle this Monday afternoon.
I'm glad to be here too.
Yeah. So our list is growing long, and last time I think we talked about just capacity with our team members, and making sure that they're set up with their priorities and the mental state, and just we think people are getting burned out and overwhelmed. And in that discussion, we realized we should probably stop and talk about what our HR professionals are working on. And we have a list, and so we thought could talk about some of the priorities for those of you in HR, but those of you also that are listening, to understand, what is it that your HR professionals are doing or maybe should be focusing on, and then you could go back and get agreement on priorities. I think that's one of the things that we said last time was, make sure you meet with your shepherd HR professionals and find out and make sure you have agreement about what your priorities are and what's not a priority right now. What are we going to defer maybe till after the first of the year, or how do we check in and communicate that? So, and I guess maybe I'll just start out, Jen, real quick, because I think one of the priorities for sure in 2020 that's elevated to the top is the health and safety of our people. And I think it's been assumed or we've taken it for granted. And now we have to be super intentional to make sure our people are healthy and safe. And we did that by moving to work from home. And now as we're reopening the office, make sure that we have all the safety protocols in place, around our office, entering the office, communications around buildings, our transportation, social distancing while in the office, all of those things. And so I think that's been taking up a lot of time, of our HR professionals. And, that's been evolving. And, as we pay attention to the CDC and new guidelines and state guidelines that are coming out, and they're all different by state, by the way. So if you have multiple offices, we have to pay attention to what they are by state, trying to figure that out and make sure that we're employing those best practices, so our people are safe and healthy, but also so they feel safe and healthy. And so I think that's been one of the top, priorities. I don't know if there's anything you'd add to that topic in particular, or if you want to add a few more, Jen.
Well, on health and safety, I think that, we kind of moved past sort of the initial pandemic health and safety. And now we're in a kind of a weird spot of fatigue, maybe pandemic fatigue and isolation and overwhelm and burnout. And we've talked about that in a prior session together. So I think HR professionals are really focused on motivation, engagement, making sure our people are okay mentally.
Yeah.
What are we doing from a mental wellness perspective? So I think it's, of course, we're still worried about the spread.
Yes.
And so I'm not trying to minimize that, but it has shifted a little bit, I think, to, gosh, how can I keep my people propped up, and how can I let them be okay and feel good? And, and how can I bring back some mojo to these folks? And so I think that's, been a part of it. And so I would put that, I agree with you. It's number one. I think number two has been like formalizing the informal. We rushed off into remote and then didn't, everything we ever said you're not allowed to do was suddenly allowed. And maybe all the stuff you were supposed to do, we couldn't do anymore. And so a lot of our policies did not catch up or weren't even close to caught up as we went into remote work. And so I think that formalizing that or catching it up, clarifying maybe is a better way to say it. I don't like the word formal because formal and flex don't seem to go together. Right. But also, catching up our protocols, not just related to remote and flex, but for instance, onboarding remotely, recruiting remotely, how to, interview techniques over Skype, Zoom, Teams, how do we qualify candidates? Mm-hmm. What does performance management look like? What's the expectation of a coach in the new remote environment? All those things have been sort of like, we're making it up as we go and doing the best that we can. But HR is running behind that, trying to, clean it up and help people know what's expected and what's good best practice in the firm and what's really not allowed. The new not alloweds, are not acceptable. So, and I feel terrible for our HR professionals that doesn't feel like, I don't think it rises to the level of people thinking, wow, that's super strategic and important. But it is, because expectations management is one of the most critical things that we do with our workforce, to make sure they know what winning looks like, and they know what the kind of the rules of the game to win are. And so that they know when they're stepping off the line, they know that. They're not surprised by that. They know where the line was because we made sure they knew where it was. And right now, boy, it is the wild, wild west. And so I feel bad for our HR professionals chasing that and not necessarily being appreciated for the magnitude of what they're trying to revise, rewrite, recreate curriculums for onboarding, for first year hires, for orientation, all the learning and development's up in the air. My goodness, so much is shifting. And I just want you HR folks to know Tamera and I are with you. We know what you're doing out there, and I know any HR person listening to this knows. We have group empathy, but I don't know that our leaders have as much empathy. How could they get more empathy, Tamera? How could our leaders have more empathy for us, do you think?
Well, and I think one of the things is to stop and understand what all those changes are that we need to make, and
Right.
Also understand what they're doing in each of our disciplines or service lines. So if we could educate, it's our job as HR professionals to educate our leaders about what those priorities are and get agreement about which ones to change first. Also, as you were talking, Jenna, you made me think. I would tap in. Some of your groups are probably doing this off on their own. You've got some cowboys out there that are maybe leading the way. And that might be a little scary, but there's probably some things to tap into. And so if we could find out who is doing some of those learning programs like you talked about, or who's doing some recruiting efforts or onboarding, or they're doing some coaching or performance reviews because of the cycles, maybe audits on a different cycle than tax. That's often the case. Maybe we could go leverage some of what they're already doing. I know a firm in the audit group was way down the path of doing some training videos, and the tax department was like, "What? Great idea! We need to learn what technology." Yeah, so I think that can build some empathy and understanding. Is just stopping to make a list almost and just sharing what are we doing, and then finding out who's doing what, and talking to it with the leaders, and prioritizing it together.
Yeah. Now, Tamera, I want to try something on StreamYard, this app that we're using to stream today. I'm going to share my screen.
Okay.
I've never done it before, so I'm a little paranoid that I could screw up our whole thing. I'm sorry if I do that, but I'm not sure I'm going to do it. I'm going to try, but it's not really giving me a choice as to what I'm sharing. So we'll see if it lets me share the app that I was hoping to share. I want to share an application window. Oh, I think I'm going to do it. I think it's going to let me. Let's learn. So can you see it, Tamera?
I think I have to add it to the stream. Look at that.
Oh, okay. Awesome. Thank you for adding it to the stream. So we're learning. Anyway, I've been using the StreamYard app since March, and we love it. But I have not shared my screen on it yet. So anyway, this is a list of what HR does, in our opinion. This is our made up list, and sorry, HR folks, if we missed something major, but these are what we would call the big rocks within HR, within the HR function in your firm. You've got HR strategy, which is the firm's overarching people strategy, and who do we want to be known as, really what are our top priorities, what kind of field do we want to have strategically as an organization, where do people fit in our overall corporate strategy, yada, yada. Then you've got talent management, which is all about managing our personnel and, how are they doing, and getting them developed and having the right people in place and having succession plans in place for our folks and really building the pipeline of talent and getting them developed. Culture, how does it feel to work here? And what are the positive attributes of our culture and what are the negative ones and how can we work on those negative ones? Strategic comp and benefits. One of the things I know a lot of firm HR professionals have been scrambling to do is figure out how are we going to do compensation roundtables in this environment. Performance management, which is all about performance appraisals and reviews, that sort of thing. Maybe a little bit of career road mapping, but that usually lives in talent management. Recruiting and staffing, which is capacity. Organizational development, which is what departments do we have and how are they organized and who's responsible for what and what are the positions within them. Learning and development, we know what that is. It's how do we get our people developed on technical and soft skills. Employee relations, which is all the issues that might arise, concerns, problems. And then HR compliance and operations, and that I would put benefits in there maybe. Maybe benefits, lives up there with strategic comp and benefits, but benefits administration's down there in compliance. So those are the big buckets of HR. And I think, Tamera, sometimes our leaders don't understand what we're doing or why we're so busy or why we're, feeling so under fire because they don't really know what's in our role. And maybe we can't have 3 change initiatives in all 11 of those buckets. Right. Or having 33 change initiatives going at once if I'm a 3/4 HR person or something and that's all we have in the firm. That's ridiculous. You can't do that. So, I think part of this overwhelm is maybe we're biting off too much and chewing it and can't get it swallowed. Maybe it's that our leaders don't understand what it is that we're supposed to be doing or what really falls into our purview. So they don't have visibility to it and they don't know that we need more resource or more assistance or maybe to reprioritize. They come out of a meeting and maybe they tell us a new HR priority they have for us, but they don't realize what's on our plate. I think that's all on us to educate and communicate.
Well, and we're being forced with some of those priorities this past year. And, they've been moving and shifting daily, probably. And so we need to communicate that as well. Like, when you said employee relations, yeah. I think that is probably number one. Just making sure that our people are taken care of and they all have unique circumstances like we've talked about. So trying to prioritize that, but then also making all the shifts. How do we get learning and development done? What's the bare minimum we need to get done? But gosh, we don't want to take away some of those soft skills and leadership that we've been developing the past 4 or 5 years that, we know a lot of firms have been investing in and making great strides. And so what's that balance? How do we get agreement about that and, how to make those shifts? So, and I do think it's changing and I think it's changing fast. And I think that's how often should we be communicating about what our priorities are? It's probably not yearly or semi-annually or even quarterly. It's probably almost monthly. Here's our HR for the coming month. So that's another way to build that compassion and get agreement about that.
Well, and you might ask, where does employee engagement live? And it lives all over the whole grid, but maybe it lives inside talent management. But right now, we're seeing that burnout we talked about in a prior session. We're seeing a lot of sort of stress on the work relationship. And one thing that I want to have all of us think about is the working mother. And there are working fathers who have the same problem. So I don't want to discount it, but there are often in 2 income families, one of the income earners is more responsible for the children and their success than the other. Right. And that's often the mother, not always. I realize 100%, not always. But in this current pandemic, I'm hearing it every day. I'm hearing it more every day, which is why I'm bringing it up today because it worries me. What we're seeing is these working mothers who are, their kids are underfoot. They are having to be schooled at home, maybe homeschooled, like they gave you a bucket of learning materials and said, good luck, hope your kid passes their essential objectives when this is over. Or they said, oh, by the way, your 6-year-old needs to be on Zoom from 8:30 to 2:30, clicking all the right buttons. That means you're on Zoom from 8:30 to 2:30 sitting next to them. There's every kind of school arrangement, right? And those parents that are responsible for the kids' success, they're finding it super hard to get their jobs done. And they're feeling a lot of loserdom, like I'm a loser with my kids and I'm a loser with my job. Right. And we always say that when a mother or a father is faced with their kids winning or them winning at work, they're going to always pick their kids winning. Right. So we're starting to hear of a lot of people kind of breaking down and saying, I need to go 3/4 time, I need to go part-time, or I need to take a leave of absence. And I'm not encouraging that because we sure don't need any less capacity in this profession. but we need compassion and we need understanding. And I'm going to be politically incorrect, and I know nobody listening has ever seen me do that before. But there are a lot of people that run firms that have had a stay-at-home parent manage their kids. And I used to tell the joke, and it's an insensitive joke, but that I love my husband, Brian. I do. I love him. And I wouldn't trade him for anything, but gosh, I wish I had a wife. And that's not, maybe an uncool, sexist joke I just made there, folks. But for those that have a stay-at-home parent and always have, they can't relate to this double income parenting with kids at home needing to be schooled. And so there's not a lot of compassion and empathy. There's not an openness for discussion or negotiation. And we're really starting to see it unravel some of these people. And this morning, one of our consultants sent us a really great link to an article about that unraveling, especially in female parents that are working. So something to watch in your organization. And gosh, the only way to tell is to do those employee relational check-ins and make sure you've got that going on.
Well, and I do think that ties completely to the employee engagement and capacity planning also. We have to get real about what people can commit to right now. And so, working with the different service line leaders to figure out, what does our capacity look like? Do we know? How we talk to our people? So then we can figure out, how do we fill in with some, fractional talent pools, or do we need to be recruiting, or do we need to, make some shifts in our, client, acceptance for the next 3 months? And I know nobody ever wants to stop selling. And that would be unpopular for an HR professional to say, maybe we should slow down selling. But if I look at it from capacity and I look at all those pieces, and I probably didn't even list all of them, there's more to look at in that puzzle. We have to get real, because your team members are looking at it going, why are we saying yes to this, and where does it fit? And so we have to have an answer for that. And so you can raise it from that perspective. How do we say yes? And what is the current capacity of your people? Where is it going to go when we say yes? I had a client in one of our leadership programs, Jen, and her project was client acceptance procedures, because they didn't have them. And one of the questions she put on it was, who's going to oversee this client, and who's going to work on this client? And if you couldn't answer that when you were saying yes during the sales process, it got elevated so that we could problem solve it. And I just thought that was so smart. And they empowered, this was a manager that did this, and they empowered this manager to come up with, what are these client acceptance procedures? And she said, hey, this has to be a question that we're contemplating and that we're, documenting. So I think that's part of it, is the capacity planning that you as HR professionals can, very much assist with. And open, maybe open conversations that maybe aren't being had, or aren't being had as transparently, or at the right levels, perhaps, so you could generate some of those.
Great points. Incredible. And I love the client acceptance idea. So Tamera, there's some people chatting. I can't respond to them. You can, but I can read them. And Rachel, hello. We love you. And I'm so glad you're out here with us today. She's talking about the fact that whoever the primary earner, the leading earner, becomes the essential worker, and the other person straddles. And I agree with that. I know many of us are trying to negotiate those things with our spouse or significant other and say, you do the day shift, I'll do the evening shift.
Right.
We take turns. But you're right, that essential worker does take the lead, or the higher earner usually takes that lead, and the other person has to negotiate. And so negotiating with the workplace is usually where that negotiation happens, to get things to get right-sized. Or we start dropping balls and feeling terrible, and then the spiral begins where we probably aren't going to stay. I also saw that Michelle Baca is out there, and I just wanted to give a shout out to her because we love Michelle, a former convergence consultant and our good friend from New Mexico. So hello. I know there are others here, but those two I just had to give a special shout out and to share Rachel's idea.
Well, and working moms. Both Michelle and Rachel, we know, are working moms. And so we have talked about some of those things. And I like Rachel's comment about the wife list is long. I said that to my husband one time, and he said, oh yeah, that'd be great. Have another wife. And he's like, never mind. That would be a bad idea. He rethought the whole idea. But it's how do we split up those responsibilities, and how do we facilitate that? And by the way, sometimes I think we think this is like off limits, like this isn't work related, and we shouldn't be having those conversations. But sometimes your team members need some strategies and ideas for how to get done what they need to get done, or how to split up the work, or how to schedule it, or who to communicate with about that. And so, if you know us and you've been following us, you know that we're going to be as transparent as possible. But that is something, to think about. Maybe there's a lunch and learn to talk about, or do a panel of some working parents and share some strategies of what they're doing to make it all work.
In the pandemic, in these circumstances. Don't wait till it's better or feels less.
Like now, do it now.
Yeah, right now is when they need it. This second. And I talked to a woman today, and she was a grandmother, and she was telling me, she was interviewing me for something, and she was telling me about her 3 children and how they were managing the pandemic with work.
Right.
And she, talked about the first one where they're in total lockdown, and but as she progressed, she went to the last child, and she said, unfortunately, they're both big earners. They both have big jobs, and they've tried to make it work. They have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, and it's killing them. So the kids are back in daycare, and they're scared to death. And I just heard that, and I'm not saying daycare is unsafe. Don't hear me saying that, because I know that there are wonderful daycares that are doing a super job of managing this. And many, many, many days have gone by without any illness. Okay, so I'm not anti-daycare. But in this instance, these people were afraid, and they were having to drop their kids off scared and just felt like they couldn't make it work at home. And that stinks. And I feel it made me sad, because I thought, I wondered if either of them had the guts to talk to their boss first and say, here's our situation. And is it possible for me to, start work every day at 2 p.m. for the time being, so that we can take turns and not put the kids in daycare? Right. So anyway, I just hated the story, and not, for any reason than the parents didn't feel good about their solution.
Right.
And when you have that, sooner or later, they'll change their situation, including their job, in order to make it work.
And then we're sad.
Yeah. And we're out of time.
I was just going to say, I think we're out of time.
We're sad, and we're out of time. And so we're sad again.
But I think what we leave you with is, make your list, share it with the appropriate parties, have regular check-ins, and because the priorities are moving and changing fast. And then when a new priority comes in, where does it fit? And make sure we're being clear about where it fits. And so if you have questions, let us know, or you have other thoughts about this topic, we would love to engage with you. So reach out to us. You can email us or engage with us here and on Facebook or in social media. So it was great to be with you again today.
Sure was.
Thanks,
Tamera.
Yes. Thanks, Jen.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.